Molly here. In this video, we will be reviewing Disney Who Season 1, Episode 3, Boom. The episode opens with two soldiers making their way through a battlefield. One is navigating, the other has a bandage over his eyes and his hand on his buddy's shoulder, so his buddy can lead the way. Both are wearing some kind of religious collars around their necks. The soldier with the bandaged eyes answers a call on what appears to be an implanted receiver near his ear. It's his daughter getting ready for bed. The blinded soldier asks if she has done her teeth. She says yes, and her dad tells her to prove it. He wants to smell her minty breath. The girl blows into her finger, and her dad says, "Oh, you little liar, teeth now." The girl questions how he can smell her breath over the comm, and he tells her dad's skills. The two soldiers are in the middle of a minefield that hadn't been there the day before. The one tells the other the mines must have migrated. The fog on the battlefield is bad. Some of the men believe the enemy is in the fog, or made of fog, and that's why they never see them. Dad tells the little girl to get Mundy to put her to bed, and to brush her teeth, and signs off with, "Kiss, kiss." The soldiers are about 1 mile from base camp. The one soldier turns to the other and tells him there might be an ambulance. The blinded soldier says, "I'll be fine." Back at base camp, Mundy is trying to trade shifts with someone else. He tells her he isn't a bishop, so he's not allowed. She tells him, "You're a verger," and he tells her he doesn't have the divinity. Mundy addresses the other soldier as Canto, and promises to show him her tattoo if he'll trade with her. She tells him it's not in general view, which makes it more exciting, given the romantic tension between them. Canto looks away and tells Mundy he's only agreeing so she'll stop bothering him. She says thanks and tells him the tattoo is on someone else. She finished it yesterday. Walking away, the little girl, Splice, tells Mundy she should be nice to Canto because he has a crush on her. Mundy asks Splice where her dad is. Back in the minefield, Splice's dad and his buddy are worried about the ambulance coming toward them. The algorithm is haywire. The blind soldier tells his buddy they have no choice. They have to keep moving forward. We learn that the ambulances are combat activated, so it may be dormant, but the sensors stay active and might detect them. Somehow, the blind soldier's buddy just falls into a crater. He gets up, doesn't look where he is stepping, steps on a mine, and that's the end of him. The mine activating wakes the ambulance, which is this robotic thing, has a screen on the front with an old woman's face as its avatar. The old ambulance lady repeats the words, "Combat detected," over and over, and heads toward the blind soldier. The blind soldier removes the bandage from his eyes in an attempt to fool the ambulance. The ambulance fires 2 cables into the soldier's arm. The ambulance identifies the soldier as John Francis Vader, gives his age and next of kin. The ambulance identifies that he's blind. 4 weeks is too long for recovery. He begs for his life, to no avail. He's told to record a message, and he says, "Kiss, kiss." The Villain Guard Corporation gives its condolences, gives thoughts and prayers, and the ambulance euthanizes him. The TARDIS finally lands in the middle of the battlefield. The Disney doctor hears the blinded soldier yelling as he's being euthanized. The Disney doctor states that someone is in trouble and runs out into the battlefield. And of course, the Disney doctor steps on a mine. Ruby finally comes out of the TARDIS and she hears the Disney doctor singing. Ruby calls out and the Disney doctor tells her everything is fine. He tells Ruby to come toward his voice and to watch where she puts her feet. Ruby reaches the Disney doctor and sees he's standing on a landmine. The Disney doctor tells Ruby to describe what he's standing on. She tells him it's a thin white disc with green lights around the rim. There's a gap in the lights, about 4 fingers wide, that has yet to activate. Ruby asks why a landmine has lights on it, and the Disney doctor tells her capitalism. Flashy lights play well in a showroom. Modern warfare is death by salesmen. The Disney doctor asks Ruby if there's a V on the mine. She says, yeah. She asks him, V for victory? And the Disney doctor tells her V for Villain Guard, the biggest weapons manufacturer in recorded history. They supplied all sides in all conflicts for the past 2 centuries in this sector. The Disney doctor had to deactivate one at a lesbian gymkhana underwater for a bet, except it wasn't live, and he wasn't standing on it, and he lost the bet. The Disney doctor tells Ruby that someone had been screaming from the top of the ridge, and tells Ruby to go check it out. While she's up there, he asks her to look for something heavy to use as a counterbalance because he's currently standing on one leg and he can't keep that up in perpetuity. If he puts his other foot down without the counterbalance, the landmine will go off. Ruby finds a cylinder lying on the ground and picks it up. She gets spooked by the vacuum drones going over, sucking up the smoke so soldiers don't choke to death before they can be shot. The smoke clears, and Ruby sees the sky on this planet for the first time. Ruby is speechless. The Disney doctor realizes this is the first time she's seen a sky other than her own. The Disney doctor figures out they're on Casterian 3, which is an empty planet. He's confused because who'd pick a fight there? Ruby tells the Disney doctor she's found something heavy. She thinks it's an urn, but it's kind of gross. She asks the Disney doctor what it is, and he tells her, never mind. Ruby asks, what do you mean, never mind? Tell me what you're not telling me. Disney doctor tells Ruby it's not an urn. There isn't a body inside of it. It is a body, a dead body, compressed somehow, like it's been smelted. The Disney doctor tells Ruby to toss the thing in the air and catch it. Somehow the Disney doctor determines the object's mass from this maneuver. He then tells her to throw it to him. Ruby tells him no. Disney doctor tells her to throw it to his right hand so he can catch it and use it as a counterbalance so he can put his left foot down at the exact same moment. Ruby tells him it's too unstable, and she's going to give it to him. They go back and forth arguing about this. Disney doctor tells her he forbids her from doing this, and Ruby tells him, good luck with that. The Disney doctor tells Ruby if this doesn't work, that she is brave and wonderful, and he forgives her for being incredibly stupid. And if it does work, he's going to be very cross at her for a very, very long time. She tells him, not that long, babes, you're standing on a landmine. And they both laugh. The Disney doctor says, count of 3, and Ruby says she needs something more rhythmic, like the beat in a song. And Ruby tells the Disney doctor to sing the song about Bonnie Prince Charlie, and they'll go on Sky. They sing the song and do the handoff. The Disney doctor puts his foot down, and more of the lights on the mine light up. They're now down to 1.5 columns of lights to go before the mine goes off. The Disney doctor looks at the cylinder and says, thank you, John Francis Vader, and a holographic projection emerges, telling them at their convenience to return his mortal remains to his parents, Agnes and Millicent Vader. The Disney doctor asks the projection if he's AI. The projection states that he's an approximate AI reconstruction of the deceased John Vader. Elements of his personality have been incorporated into the AI, and ends with, kiss kiss. The Disney doctor asks John what happened to him. John tells the Disney doctor that he was humanely terminated on the fatal condition of blindness. He was spared further suffering by a Villain Guard automated ambulance unit. His recovery was estimated as beyond acceptable parameters for a conflict as budgeted. The Disney doctor tells Ruby that patients are expensive. The Villain Guard algorithm maintains a fighting force at just above the acceptable number of casualties. It keeps them fighting, keeps them dying, keeps them buying. Medical services optimize the casualty rate for continued conflict. War is business, and business is booming. That's when John's daughter Splice shows up in the middle of the minefield. She heard her daddy's voice and asks where he is. Ruby asks the girl what she's doing there, and the girl says she received a message, and she can read a geostamp. The Disney doctor asks the girl what she's doing out there in a nasty war. The girl tells him her dad got special permission to bring her because her mom is dead. God gathered her up and made her an angel, and they'll see her again one day. The Disney doctor introduces himself and Ruby, and when Splice gives the Disney doctor her name, the AI of her dad activates. Splice is happy, yells daddy, and goes running toward the Disney doctor. Ruby grabs Splice, and they fight. This was so stupid. Apparently Ruby has trouble subduing an 8-year-old. They end up rolling around on the ground before Ruby's able to get Splice to see that the Disney doctor is standing on a landmine. The Disney doctor begins to glow. Apparently, these mines make your body explosive. That's when Mundy shows up, and things get stupider. Splice tells Mundy she's looking for her daddy, and saw his hologram, and wants to know where daddy is. Mundy sees the cylinder in the doctor's hand, aims her weapon at him, and tells the Disney doctor she's an ordained Anglican Marine. Ruby says, since when is the church an army? The Disney doctor says, since most of your history, you've been living in a blip. Mundy tells Disney doctor that he's holding the remains of an ordained Anglican. Mundy's face is ringing, and she actually answers it. She asks Kanto if he liked the tattoo. He tells her he's seen her geostamp and to get back to base because he's worried the enemy is planning an attack. Mundy says, "Shut up, you're worried. You don't even like me," and she hangs up on him. The Disney doctor asks Mundy who they're fighting. She tells them they're fighting the Castarians. He asks her to tell him about the Castarians. She admits they've never seen them. Mundy tells the Disney doctor to let go of the casket. She doesn't care about the mine and states the Disney doctor is dead already. There's a failsafe on the mine, and once activated, the mine will inevitably blow up. The Disney doctor asks how the mine works, and Mundy tells him it's immolation, triggering a quantum level chain reaction in the subject's DNA. The Disney doctor is the explosive. The Disney doctor explains that he is a Time Lord, not human, and stupid Mundy shoots him in the arm. She's surprised when he stands there and keeps talking. He tells her he is a higher dimension life form. He is a complex space-time event. She responds she's Anglican and shoots him some more. This wakes the ambulance, and it heads in their direction. The Disney doctor tells Mundy he's a lot more explosive than he looks, and he says, "Honey, I know how I look. Put a quantum chain reaction through me, and I will shatter this silly little battlefield of yours into dust." He tells Mundy to scan him. She does, and discovers he could blow up half the planet. Then the ambulance shows up, repeating, "Combat detected! Combat detected!" The Disney doctor is shouting, "You have to stop that thing." Splice is shouting for her daddy. The ambulance is shooting cables into the Disney doctor, and Daddy is showing Splice photographs, and she's all smiles. The Disney doctor is shouting, "Get it off me!" and Ruby realizes combat can draw the ambulance away. Mundy and Ruby concoct a plan for Ruby to shoot Mundy in the arm. As Ruby's about to shoot Mundy, Kanto shows up and shoots Ruby several times. Ruby rolls into the crater, and the ambulance acquires Ruby as a patient and identifies Ruby, gives her age as 3,082 years, then says next of kin, and Ruby really wants to know who that is, but the ambulance never tells. It begins to snow. The Disney doctor says the snow is good. While there's snow, there's hope, and then the snow freezes in midair. The ambulance states that Ruby's vitals are failing, and she has only minutes to live. Patient non-ordained. Treatment withheld. Kanto says he doesn't understand what's going on, and Ruby was going to shoot Mundy. Mundy shows Kanto the readings and tells him if the mine blows, it's going to take out everything. Mundy asks the Disney doctor what to do. The Disney doctor wants them to save Ruby. Kanto is reconfiguring the ambulance protocols. The Disney doctor tells Mundy they need to surrender. Surrendering would switch off the landmine because it's their mine. The Disney doctor tells Mundy when they arrived 6 months ago and advertised their presence by firing warning shots, they activated the Villain Guard acceptable casualty algorithm. They declared war on an empty planet, and they're fighting their own hardware, and it's killing them at just the right amount to keep them buying more. The Disney doctor blames the Anglicans' faith for why they didn't notice they were fighting smoke and shadows. Faith being the magic word that keeps them never having to think for themselves. Mundy tells him to prove it, and the Disney doctor says, "Seriously? Now you need proof, Faith Girl?" Mundy tells him only a bishop can declare a surrender, and the bishop will need proof. That's when Disney doctor calls on the John Vader AI to search the Villain Guard database for proof. The Disney doctor appeals to the AI dad to dad. The Vader AI goes through the ambulance to the network. Kanto is working on the ambulance, and Mundy distracts him. He admits he likes her, and just as she's about to say it back, the ambulance kills him. The algorithm is getting aggressive. It's identified Vader as a hostile data virus and permanently deletes him. Thoughts and prayers. The landmine announces it's getting ready to blow. The Disney doctor tells everyone to start running, but they tell him there's no point. The mine counts down, but gets to 1 and says, "Kiss, kiss." The Vader AI fought the algorithm and won. He heals Ruby, and she's revived. The whole Villain Guard mainframe has been taken down by parent power. The Disney doctor tells Splice he's sorry about her dad, and Splice tells the Disney doctor her dad is just dead, not gone. The Disney doctor tells Splice to keep the faith, and Mundy says she thought he didn't like faith. The Disney doctor replies that just because he doesn't like it doesn't mean he doesn't need it. They all hug and say goodbye. The Disney doctor looks into the camera and says, "Dying defines us. A sad old man once told me what survives of us is love." The TARDIS dematerializes and a single snowflake falls. The end. Well, I enjoyed the first 12 minutes of this episode, but then after that, it got convoluted. It felt like there was a war going on between the different messaging in this episode. There were so many things going on. Faith, capitalism, war. I'm not really sure what Steven Moffat was trying to tell us. It seemed like he was trying to tell us too many things at once, so his message was really getting muddled. This episode also felt to me like it was actually written for Clara, because when Ruby was reading some of her lines, it felt like it was Clara. So I wonder if this was a rejected script for when Clara was actually the companion.
I think this episode was better than last week. I think it actually was the best of this new Russell Davies Disney Who era, but that's not saying much. It felt like after about the 12-minute mark that Molly said that was acceptable, it got worse every minute after that. And I agree with Molly that Ruby was behaving mostly Ruby-like until she had that compressed casket that she was going to use to give the doctor to help with the counterbalance to help get one of his feet on the ground. And just the type of language she was using and the way it was coming out of her mouth, it was Clara. And I say that because I don't like Clara. I don't like the Moffat era with Clara. So when I feel that's coming in, I can immediately sense it. And that's indicative of this episode too. This episode showed Steven Moffat at his best and his worst. The imagery, Steven Moffat always had a good way of presenting things that looked interesting to look at. He kind of reminds me, and I don't mean this as an insult because I'm talking just visuals, but he's kind of like the Zack Snyder of television. He has that certain look to it that gives it a larger than television look, and this did have that. So that's the best of Steven Moffat. The worst of Steven Moffat is cramming all these interesting ideas, but he doesn't have any time, I guess, to really pursue any of them. He just throws them out there and just moves along to the next thing. And I think that's also indicative of Steven Moffat, and when his era started having problems, I think that was what he was doing, was this sort of thing. This is an interesting episode to try to evaluate for a review, because this felt like a science fiction episode, mostly. So you didn't have musical personifications running around, and you didn't have ships running on poop. I could see why a lot of people might be on board with this as a good episode, and had this episode stopped at about 13 or 14 minutes in, I would have given this a much higher rating than I'm going to, because the first 12 minutes or so was pretty good. And I feel like this might have been, if it was for the Clara era, if it was a rejected story, it might have been an unfinished story, because this felt like a short story. Like, it could have been 15 or 20 minutes, and this would have been good. At 44 minutes, I can't say it was good. And then there were little things that I just didn't understand. Like, I'm decades out of high school. So if I get this wrong, somebody in the comments just correct me. We're talking high school physics here. But I seem to remember back in the dinosaur days when I was in high school that gravitational acceleration works the same on all mass, whether it's a feather or a bowling ball. So the old experiment of if you drop a feather and a bowling ball in a vacuum at the same time, they'll hit the ground at the same time. So I don't understand when Disney Doctor had Ruby throw up the casket and then catch it. I guess the implication was he was measuring the rate of acceleration, but that would have been the same for pretty much anything. So I don't really understand how he was able to compute what the mass was of that object, unless something's changed. Like I said, I'm decades out of high school physics, so somebody feel free to explain to me where I got that wrong. The concept was interesting about how this corporation was essentially tricking this army to keep waging battle, to go through munitions so it could keep resupplying the army. But what I didn't understand was how. I was hoping that the episode was going to have the Doctor visiting, let's say, various camps of this army, and then we were going to find out that the different camps were attacking other troops of the same army, and so that's how they were going to keep the weapons going. It seemed like the answer here was people were just stepping on mines, and those ambulances were killing people, and they were given this invisible mud enemy they were supposed to be worried about. I didn't understand. It's like, how are you keeping this war going when it just seems like the soldiers are just so stupid that they keep falling on their own mines? I didn't get that. That's, again, another Steven Moffat type thing where he introduces interesting ideas. Steven Moffat, through his Doctor Who run, had some really interesting ideas. And in his early days, when he was much better than he was at the end of his run, he usually pursued those ideas and explored them, and the viewer was allowed to go along for the ride. And then when Steven Moffat started declining, he just started introducing ideas and then just didn't bother following up with all of them, because it felt like too much was crammed in here. There was religious stuff in here, there was faith, there was
capitalism.
Yeah, what he's calling capitalism, I would just argue for-profit military. There were lots of really good ideas here, but he didn't really pursue any of them, or at least any of the big ones. So that's why the longer this episode went on past that 12-minute mark, the worse the episode got. And I mean, like, every minute it went on, if I'm ranking something from like 1 star meaning it's really bad and 10 stars meaning it's a great episode, the first 12 minutes was like a 5, maybe a 6. It was starting to get interesting. And then as every minute ticked after that 12 minutes, it started losing stars. Because I look at this episode and I compare it to the other two. And episode 1, Space Babies, I would give a 1 star to. That's about the lowest I can give it. I would give it 0, but I could see what was going on. The audio was okay. I have to give a star just for technical basics that they got right. And then The Devil's Cord, I thought, had potential, and it was aimed at a higher aged audience. So I'm going to give that like a 2 stars, maybe 2.5 stars, maybe, just based on potential. But that's it. And 5 stars would be average on a 10-star scale. This episode, when I look at the entire 44 minutes, this was maybe a 3, maybe a 3.5, but that's pushing it, because it got really convoluted with what they were trying to state the longer the episode went on. I don't know what to think of the portrayal Moffat did with the Doctor. At the beginning, I was liking what Moffat was doing with the Doctor. He had that authoritative nature to him again. One of the things that I liked was while he was on that mine and Ruby was out looking for something to help him counterbalance, and she was like, wow. And the Doctor, while he was in peril, he was like living through somebody who hadn't seen a sky other than their own. So he was like distracted with what Ruby was going through with seeing the new sky, even though he was in a really bad situation. And that felt to me anyway like the Doctor would be, at least the new Who Doctor. So that was good. But then as it went on, Ncuti's Doctor was just crying and tears were rolling down his cheeks, and there was a shot where snot was coming into his mustache. It was hard to look at. And I understand maybe Moffat was trying to show some gritty nature to what was going on, but it didn't come across to me like that. It just, honestly, it was weird. I didn't know what to do with Ncuti's Doctor after a while. And it's disappointing because that first 12 minutes, I was liking what the Doctor was doing. I was liking what Ruby was doing. It felt like a Doctor Who episode.
I wonder if this was actually written for Capaldi. with Clara as the companion, because that was the feeling that I got while I was watching this, that I think this was actually meant for them. The other thing that I noticed, well, there were two other things. Steven Moffat seems to be obsessed with those catchphrases, like, don't blink.
Hey, who turned off the lights?
That was another one. Donna Noble is saved. And that was another one from inside the library. And this one had two of them. Combat detected. Combat detected. And kiss kiss. And the other thing that I noticed about this was it really reminded me of that follow-up to The Lodger with Craig and that thing that was living upstairs, but the second one where he was being turned into a Cyberman, but then he just shakes off the Cyberman armor, and Craig is inside somehow, and this is all because he heard his child crying. Again, parent power. It seems like that's a really weird theme to keep using, and then that makes me wonder, okay, so who was the target audience for this? Because it can't possibly be the same age group that first episode was aimed at.
You were having compressed caskets that they were squishing a human body into that, and it kind of had a skin-like look to it when...
Well, I think you could see the eyeball, too.
Yeah, so this couldn't have been for a 7-year-old kid, which is what Space Babies was.
Yeah, and standing on a landmine. That was too dark for, say, a 7-year-old.
Or a 7-year-old couldn't understand the ideas about for-profit war. That would go right over a kid's head. They're not going to be able to get that idea. Who is their audience? I would argue we've had 3 episodes of the Disney season here, and each one was targeting a different age group. This one here was targeting, I think, the oldest age group. I would argue this was targeting teenagers, or maybe, pushing toward the 17, 18 years old.
This might have been meant for, like, college kids, but then again, that whole parent power thing, I really don't think they would get into that, because most of them at that age aren't parents yet, so I don't know. I mean, maybe Steven Moffat thought he was writing this as a family show, but again, this is another instance where if I had children, I would not allow them to see this.
Those caskets, you couldn't sit there with your kid and watch that.
It made me feel uncomfortable looking at those.
Because Ruby was grossed out by it when she knew what it was.
Yeah.
I'm going to say this, and I do not mean to be insulting, but much like we've established that Russell Davies is an old guy past his prime, Steven Moffat is an old guy past his prime.
Well, again, I don't think they're writing anything original yet. I think these are scripts that were discarded years ago that they just got out of the dustbin and used. I really do. Because even in that one interview, Russell Davies said that some of his ideas he came up with 50 years ago. So, you tell me, are they actually writing anything original? Or is this just crap that they decided wasn't good enough in the before time?
Because there were all these questions that I have, like, in narrative, about how are you getting this war to keep on perpetually to be funded? Like I said, are you just getting stupid soldiers to trip on landmines? How long could you keep this war going with just the ambulances and stupid soldiers? There were things like that. Monday had that scanner device when she was scanning the doctor, yet these ambulances had to shoot these tethered darts into you to get information about you. And it just seemed like they did that just so you could have the effect of having something shot in you, like when the doctor was standing on that landmine and the ambulance came there. And
that was the only way that they could get their AI into the Villain Guard network. It seemed very convenient.
And then somehow the AI was able to jump to the doctor who was tethered to this ambulance and then ride in electric connectivity into the ambulance and then ride the Wi-Fi. And you had stuff like that. You had that snow coming down, which was a callback to the first episode, Space Babies, when that snow was inside the baby ship.
And it started to snow when the Maestro had Ruby as well.
Yeah, good point. This was the closest to science fiction we've gotten all 3 episodes. Because the Russell Davies era, if we're counting more than just the season, we're counting the 60th anniversary specials, I'm not sure if I liked this better or Wild Blue Yonder. because there was like a 20-minute window in Wild Blue Yonder that I actually did enjoy. And in the Steven Moffat episode, Boom, there was like a 12-minute window that I was actually enjoying this episode. So I don't know which episode I preferred. I think probably this one, because although they did have their identity politics messaging in there, Steven Moffat's always been kind of good at just getting that language out there just to get boxes checked and then move on with the story. Like, there were 3 references in here to lesbian. One was that dad that died at the beginning, and when the hologram AI was talking, he was talking about his 2 parents, and they had both female names. And then there was that place that the doctor was talking about that he visited, that lesbian...
Gymkhana.
Yeah. Why do you need the lesbian in front of there? Why can't you just say a gymkhana? And then there was a joke that the doctor was making because Ruby's name is Ruby Sunday, and the soldier that he was talking to's first name was Monday. So he said something, if you 2 got married, you would be Monday, Sunday. Of the 3, that was the least annoying because at least, I mean, it was a dad joke, but at least it was an attempt at humor.
Yeah.
And it's a shame. There was, much like last week, there was so much potential for what they could have done here. This was a nicer looking episode. It had that Zack Snyder, Steven Moffat TV look to it. So it looked more serious. And I think it was aimed at a higher audience. So I can recommend this based on at least this was closer to Doctor Who than what we've been getting so far. But if you watch the episode after that 12-minute mark, when Ruby comes down into the crater with that casket, her language changes. Even her facial expression started getting that Clara look to her, and there's a little bit of that banter starts up that Clara and the Doctor used to do. That was, to me, it was a turnoff. But I mean, if you like Clara, maybe this will work for you because you're going to be reminded that Ruby was channeling Clara. And so if you like Clara, you'll probably like when Ruby switched over to being Clara for a while. For me, if I had a 1 to 10 star review, I would give this like 3.5 stars on the whole 45 minutes. What would you give it, Molly?
I would probably give it a 3 because I wish that Steven Moffat had picked 1, maybe 2 themes to work with instead of throwing in what I think was probably 5 different themes and not doing any of them the justice that they deserved. Because he clearly wanted to talk about religion, but he also wanted to talk about corporate wars. He also wanted to talk about euthanasia as far as healthcare being expensive. There was the whole dad thing, and
there was a little bit of a relationship between Monday and Canto.
Yeah.
And that didn't go anywhere. Like, as soon as that started getting going, Canto died.
Yeah. Yeah. So every man in this, with the exception of the Doctor, died. All of them. Which was weird. Didn't see any women dying. Obviously, Splice's mother died well before this, and that's why she got dragged to the front line. Yeah, there was a lot of weird stuff in here, and I wish that, like I said, I wish that this had been a tighter story. Sometimes I wonder if just what Steven Moffat really needs is just an editor who knows when to tell him no. But that's just the feeling that I got from this. And
I'm starting to think Russell Davies is now the same way.
Yeah.
Because I think Russell Davies, if you had somebody else running the show and you had Davies working under him, or you had Steven Moffat working under him, and you could edit and direct and keep them in check with the stuff they want to do, because when they start going a little bit outside the lines, it gets a little bit iffy on what they're producing. But these 2, Davies and Moffat, they have talent, but as I said earlier in this review, they both look like old guys that are past their prime, like an old athlete when you see them, and it's like, well, I remember when they were at their peak in their sport, and they're definitely not there anymore.
Yeah, because by the end of the episode, it had turned into talking about the philosophy of an old man concerning death and loss and love and what you leave behind. And it really felt like This was, the musings of tired old men. I mean, I can't think of a nicer way to say that. Just, this wasn't what I was expecting. I mean, it was on one level, but...
It felt like a Steven Moffat episode, I can give it that.
Yes, but I really didn't expect it to be this sloppy. So that's the theme, I think, for this season so far. Utterly, utterly sloppy.
One thing I'll mention, because I briefly mentioned it last week, is yet another episode where Shudi's doctor is wearing a different outfit. I think the observation I made last week, I think that actually does apply, that this is the first doctor that I can remember that didn't have an outfit that was a signature outfit for that doctor. Every episode, Shudi's wearing something different. I gotta think that's on purpose, because Russell back when he did Eccleston and Tennant, and then Steven Moffat when he did Matt Smith and Peter Capaldi, they had their signature look, so they both know you're supposed to do that. So this has got to be on purpose. This has got to be signaling that something else is going on here.
Yeah, what that is, though, I have no idea. There are a number of different things, but who can say what they're thinking?
So this was definitely the best of the season.
Yeah.
I can recommend the first 12 minutes, and I don't really have any guilt about that. I think if you watch the first 12 minutes, you'll be pleasantly surprised at how much you're enjoying what you're watching. But every minute after that, and it's going to make you grit your teeth and go, oh, just stop here, just stop here, just stop here. By the time it does stop, it's
way too late.
Yeah, I mean, it moved to a place where it's like, as a collective whole, yeah, it fits in with this Disney season. It's a shame. I can see why Steven Moffat no longer is making Doctor Who, and it was moved on to somebody else, because this, I don't think, was good. It had 12 minutes of good, and then it had a lot of not good. So at the end of the day, the not good was longer than the good. I don't even want to have any conversations about what they could have done, because they didn't. And since it's a one-off episode, there's no point in trying to talk about the things they could have done with the topics that Moffat brought up, because it doesn't matter. Like, they're not going to talk about them again, so why bring it up?
Yep, and he didn't do him justice anyway, so what's the point? As I said, I give it a 3 out of 10.
Same.
And, it's up to you guys. Again, this is the most watchable, so if you're going to watch any of this season, I would recommend this one so far. But otherwise, this was not up to the standard that we came to expect from either Moffat or Davies from their original runs as showrunner. Anyway, what did you guys think? Leave your thoughts in the comments below.
Take care.